Last time out, we introduced you to this year's FC25 Career Mode career. Here at Total FIFA Career Mode, we have an ambitious ownership group named the Pitchside Pub, and they have purchased a minority stake in Real Betis with the agreement to rebuild the stagnant club around youth, acquire American talent for the Pitchside Pub to market back home, and to obtain Vitor Roque on a permanent basis. But were Real Betis able to pull this off? And what does their new young squad look like? And more importantly, is this going to work? Find out next on Real Betis, the Vitor Roque redemption story here at Total FIFA Career Mode. Now, to pull off this grand plan, money is going to need to be spent, and we only started with 17 million euros. But Real Betis also has plenty of players of value to sell, so cleaning house has to be our first step. Now, as we load up our transfer list with everything not nailed down, let's go over the rules for this career. Rule number 1, we must buy Vitor Roque from Barcelona. This is where the timeline deviates from reality and enters our career's alternate reality. Alone is not good enough. A rebuild needs a star to build around, and Roque is the star we need. Before anything else, we have to acquire Vitor Roque. Rule number 2, we must at all times have at least 5 American players on our 25-man active roster. They don't have to be active for every game or even in the lineup, but in exchange for their investment to acquire Roque, the Pitchside Pub has stipulated that the club will always feature American players. Rule number 3, we must abide by the 22-80 rule. What is that, you ask? Well, we made it up. But it stipulates that at the start of this career, every player on this team must be under the age of 22 as of the July 1st purchase date by the Pitchside Pub, and that they all must have an overall potential of at least 80. Not a current rating of 80, we can't afford young players like that just yet, but their growth potential has to project them over 80. This also includes keeping any players on the current Real Betis squad that fit that description, and there are a number of them, which is part of why we selected Real Betis to make this investment. We will be required to keep all of those players in our fire sale. And lastly, our 4th rule, some success will be demanded by our players. Real Betis finished last season in a European spot, even if it was the UEFA Conference League. A rebuild is understood to take time, especially when the goal is to become a perennial Spanish power. But an extended drop in results won't be tolerated, and young talent will not stick around for too long without being able to play on the continental stage. So at the end of the first season, if European football is not obtained, any player who has progressed to a current rating of 80 or higher will demand a transfer, and we will be forced to sell them. So the pressure is on new manager Virgil de Kruger and his ownership group to deliver results and deliver them quickly before the entire plan falls apart. Now, before we get into the new roster and how we're building this team, make sure you hit that subscribe button for us down below so you can follow the channel and follow this career the entire season. Get down in that comment section, let me know what you think of this whole premise, who we should acquire, what players we should be going after. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub and check out our website, pitchsidepub.com. Now, before we build this team, as mentioned, we have 6 players that we are required to keep on this roster per our rules. Iker Lasota is a 22-year-old winger/wide midfielder who's a current 73 with an 82 overall potential. Abde Ezazuli is another 22-year-old winger wide midfielder who can also play a little bit centrally, and he's a 74 presently, so he may help some right now, but he's only got 81 potential. Altamira is yet another 22-year-old, but this time he's a midfielder, and he's 6'2", which I like, but he's only a 71 present rating and an 80 overall potential. And Felix is an undersized 20-year-old center back who's just a 67 now and only an 80 overall. Now, these 4 players will be a part of the roster because our rules require us to keep them, and ideally we'll play enough games deep into competitions to use them to varying degrees. But none of these players are ones we anticipate being centerpieces of the future, but it's a great start for depth. But there were 2 existing Betis players on the roster who are going to be a big part of the future. Asani Diao is a star in the making and is one of the reasons we landed on Betis for this career. Just 18, Diao is an absolute blazer on the outside. Now he's only a 71 at present, but he's still very young and has an overall potential of 87, certainly the highest of any of the players we're going to be keeping and probably as high as any player will be able to obtain. In reality, Diao has been on the outs under Manuel Pellegrini, so he was thrilled to see new manager Virgil de Kruger take over. Diao won't be a starter because we need to win some games now, but he's going to play a lot as we develop him and he is a huge part of the club's future. Lastly, we will be keeping Johnny Cardoso, a 22-year-old American midfielder who's been working his way into the national team conversation lately and is quickly becoming a US fan favorite. At 6'1", he could play as a holding midfielder or further forward, and he's a 76 rated player presently with 83 potential. Since we're reversing time slightly to begin this career anyway, we've also undone his future commitments to Tottenham Hotspur, because Cardoso is a huge part of this project and he's not going anywhere. This group is a start, but we need at least 25 players to fill out this roster, and we've just listed everyone on the roster on the transfer market. So now what do? We did receive some offers for player swaps and we took advantage of those wherever possible, but after all of our player sales we ended up with a budget of around 133 million euros. Now, it's time to shop. We can break our acquisitions into 4 categories: pieces for the future, important role players, the Americans we are required to have, and then our core pieces that we're going to build around. Now, we need plenty of depth on a roster that's only keeping 6 players, so we started with the ultra young players with tons of growth potential. They're cheap, and they're willing to take a lesser role, and they can grow into true stars. On this roster, we acquired Lennon Miller from Motherwell, Nico O'Reilly from Manchester City, and Chris Rigg from Sunderland. Only Miller from this group is going to see any significant playing time, but all 3 have tremendous growth in front of them and could end up being steals once they develop. The important role players are going to be our biggest group on this roster. We're in 3 competitions, so rotating players is going to be essential, and we need to keep players healthy. We added 7 players who should all see regular playing time. Along the back line, we can expect Eric Martel from FC Köln, Teden Mengi from Luton Town, Tobias Palacio from Argentinos Juniors, and Bright Ari Embi from Sporting Braga to rotate as we vary from a back 3 to a back 4 in different formations. In front of them, Mandela Keita from Parma and Federico Redondo of Inter Miami will rotate in alongside Johnny Cardoso, particularly when we play in a double pivot. And up front, highly touted Argentinian midfielder Franco Mastantuono joins Betis from River Plate. Mastantuono is extremely coveted by many of the biggest clubs in Europe and has an 87 potential, meaning he could eventually be a star for this club as well, but for now he's going to play a reserve role, rotating in at the number 10 position when needed. Now, we have to have 5 Americans, of course, as per our rules, and we kept 1 in Johnny Cardoso, so we need at least 4 more, but in fact we acquired 5. Christopher Lund will become one of the few true fullbacks on this roster. Coming from Palermo, the American is on the fringes of the United States men's national team roster and may rotate in when we play 4 at the back. Similarly, we also acquired Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach, whose ceiling is just barely high enough to qualify for this squad, but he can play fullback or center back, giving us versatility and depth. But here's where it gets fun, because we don't want to just meet our American player quota, we want some stars. We were able to poach Yunus Musa from Milan by offering him more consistent playing time than the Rossoneri were able to. Musa's combination of speed, versatility, and stamina mean he's going to play almost every game, though it could be at 4 or 5 different positions. Next, we were able to free Giovanni Reina from Borussia Dortmund, where he's fallen out of favor with yet another coaching staff. The much maligned and often injured Reina needs a fresh start and he needs to play, and a young team with a great coach surrounded by a number of his national team squad members seems like a great opportunity to see if he can finally live up to his potential. And lastly, our biggest American splash is Malik Tillman from PSV. The former Bayern Munich product has had success in the Eredivisie, but is dying to show his skills in a tougher league. He'll be a starter on the wing for Betis and a key part of our offensive attack. These acquisitions give us 6 American players that will make Betis the focal point of European fans back in the States, and will quickly elevate Real Betis' profile to a massive new audience. But we're not done. Lastly, we need our most important pieces, the key core of this squad, both now and for the future. You know we had to start with Vitor Roque. That was the stipulation from the start, and Roque will lead the attack in as many games as possible. The young Brazilian will be the focal point of the entire offense. But now that the tip of the spear has been secured, we need to stabilize the defense, and our largest financial investment will come between the pipes. Anatoly Trubin is a 22-year-old Ukrainian goalkeeper who joined Benfica last year and had immediate success. But he's ready to challenge himself at a tougher level of competition in order to help him secure his spot as Ukraine's #1 goalkeeper. That opportunity, along with 45 million euros sent to Benfica, was enough to get the job done, and it gives us a chance to one day have the best goalkeeper in La Liga. Lastly is a player who flies under the radar but may end up being one of our most important pieces in this rebuild. Maurits Kjærgaard is only a 73 overall with 83 potential, but he plays well above those ratings. More importantly, his versatility allows him to play anywhere on the pitch, from striker to wingback. Most likely he'll play in the midfield, though you can expect him to start in up to 6 different positions throughout his career and move around as needed in games when substitutions are made. That alone makes him incredibly valuable. So there you have it, our final roster as we prepare to take on La Liga in a rebuild of historic proportions. It all centers around Vitor Roque, but there's talent all over the pitch. The question will be if manager Virgil de Kruger can develop these players quickly enough to keep them beyond this year. We'll start to play some games in Episode 3 as we kick off our La Liga season and put this test into action. Do you think it's going to work? Where will Real Betis finish in La Liga? And what about the UEFA Conference League? Get down in that comment section, let me know what you think about this roster, this career, and if we're going to be successful. You can also leave comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below if you haven't already followed the channel, and check out our website, pitchsidepub.com. We'll be back soon with Episode 3 of Real Betis, the Vitor Roque redemption story, at Total FIFA Career Mode on the Pitchside Pub.